What's going on, everyone? Welcome to my channel introduction. My name's John, and this is Redemptive Psych. And this is going to be just sort of a heart-to-heart a talk about what my purpose is here, a little about me, and if the stuff that we're doing here sounds interesting to you, I invite you to explore more. So let me just start with the name of the channel, Redemptive Psych. It's an attempt to combine things. It's an attempt to combine personality psychology, knowledge about personality types, personality systems, specifically the Jungian system, which became the MBTI, and then our culture has really simplified the MBTI in a lot of ways. And then this work is going back into that and using Jung's other works and a lot of other people involved to really dig deep into the human psyche. But a lot of these systems, personality systems, and this one specifically, is sort of absent of God in its nature. So my goal is to bring God back into the conversation. Now, I don't know exactly what that will look like, because ultimately these systems were not designed from making a distinguishing between a redeemed person and an unredeemed person, and that's a challenge. And there have been some attempts to interpret some of these systems in a Christian lens, but in my opinion, it's just been, at least with the ones I've encountered, this happens a lot with the Enneagram, for example. A Christian will take the Enneagram system and just sort of repackage it in Christian language. There is use to that, because there are some people who will not read anything that doesn't have a Christian title. So it reaches an audience and it has a purpose. But ultimately, from what I've seen from most of those attempts, it doesn't add much to the work. It just justifies using the word God or Christian or even other religions in that. So, if the work is valid and good enough on its own, then why does God need to be there? And that's what I'm contending with, is that I believe there is a perspective, a theory that can be renewed with a perspective of God, that a lot of this stuff will be re-energized, and there's going to be some unique combinations and unique insights because of the interconnection of God and personality psychology. Now, what will this channel be about? What is the content here going to be? At least at first, it's mostly going to be about the 16 types, the temperaments, and the functions, the attitudes, which are all sourced from books here. Going over briefly just sort of the scope of the mechanics and the categorizations and the qualities of different types, all those things. And then we're going to go deeper and deeper, and then we're also going to talk about types of people, typing people in the world, typing athletes, typing characters. I really value typing characters, actually. Some people are skeptical of that and think it's not worthwhile. I think it's extremely worthwhile, and I think it's really fun too. So we'll do that. But most of the content here is going to be about analyzing personality, discussing the differences between people, and then going deep into how each person, how each type can be more of themselves. And that right there is sort of the purpose of why I'm here, because there is an epidemic of people not being accepted. And you see this playing out in the culture war of people demanding acceptance. And especially with political issues. And there's an issue there that arises from an individual growth perspective, that if your state of well-being is dependent on other people's acceptance of you, then I think what you may need is a more developed and confident sense of self. And I've seen many people try and build that on their own, just like using mantras or trying to decide that they're a certain kind of person. There can be value to some of those things, but in general, if you're fighting against who you are, it's going to be a battle you're not going to win. So the way to start that, the way to combat that, the way to become more confident within yourself is to acquire some knowledge about who you are, what you are, really. Because part of the human being is computational, is a mechanical creature. That's not the whole thing, but part of it. And many people push back against this. The stereotypical response to personality systems is, don't put me in a box. And the reality is a human being would not be able to make computers or any kind of robotic devices if a part of the human being was not mechanical and preordained, as they were born. Meaning that our types, our personality types, at least the types that we'll be talking about at first, correlated with the MBTI words, labels, those are things that are given to us when we're, they don't change. They're there when we're little, when we're born, most likely. And once we are a certain type, we don't become something different, though it can grow and expand and look like something different. At our core, just like a computer, we have some pieces of ourselves that are like chips that are dictated, and how we use those chips is up to us to a large degree. And that is where the differentiation process of a human being is not in being unique from birth necessarily, because there will be other people like you. There will be other types that are the same type as you. And if you cannot accept that, you're really going to struggle with acquiring true self-understanding, because part of self-understanding is understanding how you relate to people like you, how you are similar, and then how you are different, and how and why you are different from those people. All those questions, all those insights are really important in developing a sense of self. Now, why is this important to me? First of all, I have really always found personality psychology fascinating ever since mid-high school, and when I kind of discovered it, and even before that. There's something about it that just speaks to me. I don't know what it is, and I think for those of us who have something that's just really interesting to us, it's hard to explain fully why it's so compelling. So I don't know, but I'm glad that I like it, and I'm here to share a lot of that stuff with you guys. And part of my own research here is putting out a statement of faith, basically, that there is a version of personality psychology that bringing God into it is going to unlock a bunch of new things. And I'm not sure exactly what those things are. I have a sense for some of them, and those things I plan to share. But that's part of my purpose, is to discover, part of my purpose with this channel, with this content, is to discover what the unity between this knowledge and a perspective of God being within a person, what that means. Because the presentation of these facts, this information of a human being having a certain type, and they have certain cognitive functions, certain tools, whether they're a deep internal thinker or a deep internal feeler, whether they're more aware of other people, whether they're self-driven, or whether they are happy to do what they're told. There are versions. The way this information is presented is very rarely within the conversation of any kind of God being present. And what is the difference between a transformed person who is a certain type and an untransformed person who is the same type? That's an important conversation. It's a dangerous conversation because it's very easy to interpret that as rejection, which is the culture, I think our culture's criticism of Christians, which we haven't done ourselves a lot of favors to, and some of those are warranted, but that is this area of bringing God into conversations about personality psychology is greatly lacking, and that's part of what I'll be doing here. So I still haven't really answered the question why. Like, why do we need this? I said a few minutes ago that there's an epidemic of, I said non-acceptance, but it's really an epidemic of people not understanding themselves and not understanding others. There's a lack of quietness in our world where people don't draw into themselves. They don't draw into other people. We're kind of distracted and running around and oftentimes trying to do everything to avoid being drawn into ourselves because it's uncomfortable at first. We're scared of what we may find. And more than anything, we don't really know what to do with what we find within ourselves. And a big part of transforming that is learning who you are, what type you are, what your tendencies are, your strengths, where your natural insecurity is, which will be with you your entire life, where your natural competency is, which again will be with you your entire life, where your source of worry is, where your source of being critical is. All these things are vital and transformative insights that I believe people need to know. Now, if they don't want to know, then they don't have to know because they'll choose not to. But this content is for people who want to know. I think that the most important attitude, rather, of this knowledge, like learning anything, is it's not the right time to push it on people if they're not ready or if they don't want to. This content is for people who want to and are ready and are interested. And that last part is important because there are some people who are living great lives, who are good people, who are smart, who are capable, and doing just fine, and they don't live this psychology stuff every day. So in other words, even though I feel this is a mission that's sorely lacking in our world, there are some people who won't need it, and there are some people who it's just not for. But most of us, I think, this information and these insights and these distinctions are life-changing because I grew up in a Christian community, in many Christian communities, and I feel like there's a deep, how would you say it? A deep attitude of not allowing people to explore themselves or to explore others. It's just kind of slapping the sticker of Jesus on stuff or on people and sending them down the line. That's not very compelling and it's not helpful most of the time. So because of this, because of the Christian community specifically not always being so good at recognizing, understanding, and celebrating individual differences, that's part of my mission here, is really to advocate for us to make a change. It's not to say no one does that. There's some people I know who are very good at that. But overall, the attitude of the culture, as far as I can perceive it, is not one that's interested in the details of your identity. And the issue with not being interested in that is that an action or a word or any guidance you may give to someone or any encouragement you may try and give, any of that's not rooted in who they are, ultimately it will not last. It will not stick because you have to understand a person. You have to speak to a person in a way that is true to who they are. And when I say true to who they are, I mean that in a very technical sense. Maybe they're a very entertaining and outgoing and gregarious ESFP who just wants to perform and be good at a lot of different things and have a good time. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. Certain communities may judge people like that because that they're not, overly serious all the time, or they're not picking a single thing to go after. Or there's other types who, like an INTJ, the ESFP's opposite, who's sometimes very serious and not very sociable at times. and kind of disagreeable at times and not afraid to share their opinion. Though they can be afraid to share their opinion. But anyway, there's things that we judge other people for that are just a symptom of who that person is. They can't help it. They shouldn't help it because that's who they are. And the conviction that I think a Christian specifically, but anyone has to deal with is if I don't like something in someone that is just a reflection of what type they are or who they are, what does that say about me? What does that say about my judgment because of my ignorance of them, my unwillingness to have a different perspective? And it's not to say people don't do bad things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about behaviors, natural behaviors and tendencies that people have that we judge or condemn or do not accept. And that's an issue. And until we understand what makes a person up and why they are that, and what are the things going on in their psyche, and where they live their life from, until we ask those questions and have answers to those questions, in my opinion, we're not qualified to give a person guidance or necessarily to chastise a person for not measuring up to our image of what a mature person may look like. In order to speak to someone, you have to speak their language. And yes, there are mature people and immature people, but there's mature versions of types and immature versions of types. And we need to speak to someone through their type and invite them to manifest the best version of their type, which is absolutely possible. And I think people are begging for this. I think people have missed out on others, especially authority figures and parents and schools, taking the time to see what is different about their child or their friend or whoever else, and not take the time to understand or speak to what makes that person unique. So that's what we'll be doing here. We'll be going into a lot of detail at first. We're going to cover some broad bases quickly. We're going to cover the temperaments. We're going to cover the functions, the attitudes, and probably a couple other things. I might do Linda Barron's interaction styles. That's really, 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 really good. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff to cover, but this is the intro. This is my mission here, at least for now. As a true progression type or a movement type, if you guys know what that means. The goal kind of shifts as you move towards it, but those are at least the values that I'll be building from, and I don't think those will change anytime soon. So anyway, that's the intro. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, if you're interested, hang out for more content coming your way soon. Thanks. Bye.